How are your kids going to be an asset to me? Again, how are your kids going to be an asset to me? This is a video that is triggering a lot of women online because they don't like the way my man here worded and said this. No more waste of time. Let's get it.
Okay, let me ask you this. How are your kids are going to be an asset to me if I was dating you?
I would never date a man that ever asked me no craziness like that. I would never. Because you would never ask me how my kids would be an asset to you.
That's the thing.
That's insanity.
But see, I'm coming from a logical standpoint. You have to ask those questions.
Any woman.
And let me say one more thing.
It's going to let you say, how can your kids be an... No, sweetie. No.
Okay, let me...
One more time. One more time.
Ask you this. How are your kids are going to be an asset to me if I was dating you?
I would never date a man that ever asked me no craziness like that. I would never. Because you would never ask me how my kids would be an asset to you.
Right. So this is what I want to say about this topic, because I've spoken about this a bunch of times. You guys know my firm stance when it comes to having conversations like this with women in real life, right? You don't have coffee pod conversations. And when I say that, I know there's some men who just will not understand this. You don't sit there and ask a woman, what do you bring to the table on the first date? You don't sit there and say to a woman, and I'm not, follow me, because I'm not saying that you don't ask those questions to yourself. Because what that question is conveying is he just wants an answer. Unless if it's just for the podcast. But you'd have to be a man who's interested in dating a woman who has kids to be wondering this. Otherwise, what are you doing on the date in the first place, right? That has to be established first. Oh, do you have any kids? Whatever. Then you go on the date. Right? You want to filter out your deal breakers before the date. I don't feel like I have to tell any man that. And then once you get on the date, I'm assuming you're not asking questions like, so how are your kids going to benefit me? That's just weird. That's a weird question to ask somebody in real life. On a podcast, it's different. But I think there is a sect of men online that just doesn't understand that there's a difference between podcast conversations and real life conversations. I know this from bringing guests on my show back when I used to bring guests on my show. If I'm trying to date a chick, I'm not sitting there on the date asking her, so what do you bring to the table? No, I'm watching how she moves. If I have no problem dating a woman with kids, then I'm looking at her kids and saying, okay, are these kids problematic or are they an asset? Are they going to cost me? Kids are expensive, period. But there's a difference between problematic kids who are not only going to cost you monetarily because you're going to have to provide for them, but also they're going to cost you with your peace. You can have conversations about discipline and all these other things. But I think a lot of these, because as a content creator, I realize it like, this is a podcast conversation, right? This obviously generates views, and here we are talking about it. Again, follow me here. This is a question men do ask who are interested in a woman. There are two situations where this man may ask this question. Number one, he tells her, oh, you have kids, I'm not interested. And she goes, why not? Then he could say, hey, I just don't feel like a woman with kids would benefit me for the type of relationship that I value and want. Or two, he's on a podcast.
That's the thing.
That's insanity.
But see, I'm coming from a logical standpoint. You have to ask those questions.
Any woman.
And let me say one more thing.
It's going to let you say, how can your kids be an... No, sweetie. No.
So notice how she's stuck on how the question sounds. So here's where I'll disagree. I'll disagree with any woman who doesn't think a man is asking these questions to himself before entering a relationship with a woman who has kids. Let's read some of these comments. Top comment here says, that sounds like he don't need to be around kids. I don't get what that means. Somebody else here says, coming from a childless woman, excuse me. Here's somebody else who says, the bear. Somebody else who says, that's a terrifying question. Then going to say he's being logical. Here's somebody else who says, please never leave your children in the company of any man who says things like this. He sounds dangerous. See, now you're taking it too far.
That grown-ass man got on a podcast. We need to take the bitches away. Got on a podcast and asked a mother, how would your kids be an asset to me? Huh? As a grown man, why do children need to be assets to you? Let me tell you what I heard.
You hear that? They do need to be assets if he's going to be a stepfather. Men just don't marry a woman with kids without considering how those kids are going to affect his life. In most cases, he's taken on a huge responsibility where he's going to lose a lot of money and time investing in kids who are not his. Though I disagree with the fact this is not a question you just flat out ask somebody, I can still definitely acknowledge that men weigh out whether that child's going to be an asset or not.
When you as a woman is not enough for me, I won't touch them kids. That's all I heard.
Okay, let me ask you this.
I'm out.